Hello, good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, brought to you by the last man standing with loserpool.com. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou. And on this edition, we're going to be looking back at the draw at Burnley, not the ideal result from an Arsenal's perspective. Of course, we'd have loved to come away from Turf Moor with all 3 points, but it wasn't to be. We're going to be dissecting that game. We're going to be talking a little bit about Mikel Arteta. Have Arsenal progressed under Mikel Arteta and why? If so, how much? Going to be getting your thoughts in the live comments as well. We're going to be talking about Alexandre Lacazette. We're going to be talking about Burnley's pitch and whatever else comes to mind during this next 25 minutes or so. So a big hello to everybody who is tuned in live at the minute. And of course, to those of you who are listening to us back on the podcast version a little bit later on, don't forget to like, subscribe, review. You know the drill by now. So let's begin with the game itself. Of course, it ended in a disappointing 0-0 draw in the end. Arsenal had their chances, but as did Burnley. If we look at the two starting lineups from an Arsenal perspective, it was Bernd Leno in goal as expected, Hector Bellerin at right back. Mustafi was in the team, and that came as a little bit of a surprise because after that injury he picked up at Bournemouth, there was fears that he'd be out for quite a long time. Fears depended on your viewpoint on Mustafi, but there was a concern that we'd be without him for a little bit of time, for quite a sustained period, a significant period. But he came straight back into the team alongside David Luiz. Bukayo Saka continued at left back after he's been, in really impressive form of late. Guendouzi came into the middle of the park alongside Granit Xhaka. Ozil in front of them with Aubameyang and Lacazette making up the rest of the attacking trio. Of course, Gabriel Martinelli too. When I look at the team, what stood out to me initially as a little bit of a surprise was, of course, Mustafi's inclusion. It seems that Mikel Arteta likes Shkodran Mustafi, and you can understand why in a sense. And I know people get on Mustafi's back, but for me, he is very comfortable in possession. And I think that's something that Mikel Arteta values. He values a centre-half who can play with the ball at his feet. And as far as that goes, Shkodran Mustafi is certainly one of our strongest players, from our defensive options. That's not to say he's a world-beating, world-class defender, but he is pretty comfortable on the ball. And obviously, like I said, Mikel Arteta values that. He has played well of late. I thought he did really well against Bournemouth until he got injured. I thought he was very good at Chelsea after he made that mistake. So, in terms of his form, he kind of deserved to be in there. So I haven't got any issues with that. I guess my surprise came from the fact that he did pick up that knock and it did look so severe, yet he was back in the team so quickly. That was where I was surprised, I would say. Now, the other thing was, of course, Matteo Guendouzi coming into the middle of the park alongside Granit Xhaka. Now, for me, the balance just doesn't work with those two. I've said it from last season. It's not something new. It's not something that I've just decided in the last sort of, couple of weeks or so. This has been an ongoing issue for me. Matteo Guendouzi gives you plenty of heart. He gives you plenty of passion, plenty of fight. But in terms of playing alongside Granit Xhaka, I just don't think that the pair work. I think the best combination that Arsenal have in the middle of the park is that of Xhaka and Torreira. So that's the preferred pairing I'd like to see. Now, was Torreira carrying a knock? Was there a reason, probably beyond what we know as fans, that Lucas Torreira was left out? I don't know is the honest answer to that. There's been no indication of him having any sort of fitness troubles or concerns, yet he was left out of the team. And for the first time, I kind of looked at Mikel Arteta and I thought, are you sure about this? It didn't really make sense to me. The other one was Alexandre Lacazette. Now, for me, he's been dire for weeks now. And I know you don't just become a bad player overnight. And I'm not saying that, he's going to be playing at this level forever, but he's clearly out of form. He's clearly struggling. So for me to start him didn't really make sense. I mean, you're playing away from home, most likely going to have joy on the counter attack, you would think. Therefore, I probably would have thought that a front three of Aubameyang, Martinelli, and Pepe would have made more sense, in my opinion. Anyway, that's how I felt about it. And Lacazette's so out of form that he's starting to irritate me now watching him play. The link-up play isn't there. When he gets in the positions to have an attempt at goal, the confidence isn't there. He snatches at chances. You can see that. So for me, Alexandre Lacazette shouldn't have been in the team. For me, his goal record isn't anywhere near good enough. It's nowhere near where it should be. I read somewhere that he hasn't scored an away goal for 2 years. That's shocking. That is shocking for somebody who's a £50 million centre forward. And, there's people sitting there saying he needs a contract extension, etc., etc. Him and Aubameyang must sign. Not entirely convinced that Alexandre Lacazette must sign. I think that Arsenal could probably look at somebody else as an alternative option. That's just my view on Lacazette at the moment, but we'll come on to that in a little bit more detail a little bit later on in the show. Now, in terms of the overall performance, look, it wasn't great. At times that it picked up and there was an uplift and Arsenal were moving the ball a little bit quicker, a little bit slicker. The start of the game was really good. And the end of the game was pretty good as well. But in between that, Arsenal were poor. And you know what you're going to get from Burnley. You're going to get those long balls, that direct approach. The physical nature of them is so clear and evident for everybody to see. And Mikel Arteta made a point about that, didn't he, in the lead up to the game, that Arsenal needed to match them in that area. They needed to match them physically. They needed to match them for desire. And he was absolutely right. And I've whilst there's a few decisions that I look at in that team and I question Mikel Arteta, this is not one of those rants against him. This is not me turning on him or anything like that, because I actually do think he's the right man and I'm willing to give him time. But that doesn't mean you cannot question someone. That doesn't mean you cannot disagree with certain decisions. And, when I started questioning Unai Emery's decisions, I was getting a hell of a lot of abuse. I'm questioning certain aspects of what he did yesterday, and that's it. That's all it is. Exactly what it says on the tin. There's no hidden agenda. There's no more to it. And I think as fans, we're absolutely entitled to do that. We're entitled to ask questions about certain decisions, to ask questions about certain, selections that the manager makes. And I think yesterday we were well within our rights to ask the question about some of those selections. That's not to say that we want him sacked or that he's crap or anything like that. But, asking the question is absolutely fine. Now, in his post-match press conference, Mikel Arteta had a little bit of a dig at Burnley's pitch, and he spoke about the length of the grass and that it was really dry and it made it difficult for Arsenal. God, apologies. It made it difficult for Arsenal to play their game, and rightly so. It's something that Mikel Arteta said that Burnley are well within their rights, to do that. They're well within their rights to leave their grass that little bit longer. They're well within their rights to leave the pitch dry, and they are to a degree. But this is, and as a friend said to me when we were discussing this yesterday, this is the Premier League. It's not League One. It's not League Two. It's not an FA Cup tie between a massive club and then a minnow who are trying to do everything they can to possibly level the playing field. Burnley have a responsibility to provide a good surface to play on, in Premier League games. And this is not a moan that just Mikel Arteta's had. There were various reports from various journalists, from various outlets, actually, before the game yesterday, talking about the state of Burnley's pitch and that it was dry, that the grass was too long, that it was a problem and it could have an impact on the game. Now, that's not to say that's an excuse for Arsenal not winning, but Mikel Arteta was right to raise it. It's something that he said he expected because he came across it during his time at Manchester City. He came across, them doing that sort of thing. He went to Burnley on a number of occasions and Manchester City had the same issue. And he said that he didn't even water the pitch for their training sessions prior because he expected it. And he knew it was coming and he tried to make them adapt best. And he said, we didn't always adapt to it, which is a little bit of a problem. But, as I say, it's something that's a little bit irritating. It's something that, in my opinion, the Premier League need to step in on. I think the Premier League need to dictate a minimum standard in regards to the playing surfaces. And, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. I think it's unfair, but there is at the moment no rule that says you can't do that. And so Burnley were within their rights to do whatever it is they wanted to their pitch. And, we know for next time. And, Mikel Arteta preempted it, but that wasn't helpful, but it wasn't the reason we didn't win. And I think Mikel Arteta was clear about that as well. If you see the headlines, there's people saying, oh, Mikel Arteta was moaning about the pitch. He mentioned the pitch. He brought the pitch up. He said his piece on it, but followed that on with the fact that his team didn't adapt well enough to it. And he also followed it on with the fact that, in his view, Burnley are allowed to do that, and they're well entitled to have their pitch in whatever state they see fit. Considering Burnley never play the ball on the pitch, I can understand why they do it, because it was just long ball after long ball after long ball, wasn't it? Aerial assaults galore. And that's why, for me, I know I'm going off on a tangent a little bit here, but that's why when people talk about Sean Dyche and they say he should get a bigger job, that is why he absolutely shouldn't get a bigger job, because his football is so limited, and people will talk about him having limited resource at Burnley, and that's why he plays that way. I don't think it is. I think that if you've been in a job for that long, then you should try to make progress, and your football should progress and adapt and improve. And it never has under Sean Dyche. It's always been the same crap for me. And that's why, as far as I'm concerned, he's not worthy of taking a big job until he shows that. And I'm not saying that he should be playing Manchester City style football and taking on the world toe to toe. And I get that in games against the so-called bigger clubs that he wants to close the gap, and he wants to, make it a more level playing field and try and get physical and get in people's faces, because that makes Burnley have a stronger chance of competing. I'm cool with that. But then what about the games against the smaller teams? You have to show some developments and progress. And Sean Dyche has never shown that. So when people talk about him getting a big job, it infuriates me, because he's not shown anything to suggest that he's worthy of a job like that. Moving on, let's talk about the overall progress under Mikel Arteta. And this has kind of been a little bit of a debating point this weekend. I was a little bit quiet on Twitter yesterday because it was Sunday. I saw the game. I tweeted a few things post-match, and then I tried to take a break from scrolling through social media. I don't want to spend all my evenings doing that. So I took a little bit of a step back last night, and had a little bit of a think, actually, without reading sort of the knee-jerk reactions that we've come to associate with Twitter. And I decided that there has been progress under Mikel Arteta. That is my view. I'm going to tell you why. Feel free to chip in the comments section and let me know what you guys think. But the reason I do believe has been progress is because we are noticeably more difficult to beat. And it's as simple as that for me. Arsenal have become more resilient. Arsenal are a lot more drilled in terms of their defensive shape. And as a result, we're conceding less goals and less chances. That's not to say that we're defending well enough completely yet. There's still room for improvement. Of course, we conceded some chances against Burnley yesterday. We also had some of our own, though, and that's kind of goes unmentioned by the wider media, which I don't know why. But anyway, the progress is there in the sense that we are now more resilient. And that comes from a number of tweaks that Mikel Arteta has made. First of all, the defensive shape is better. The left back is kind of allowed to get forward, but then that means the right back isn't in the same phase of play. And under Unai Emery, Arsenal's fullbacks were consistently bombing on both sides at the same time. And they were doing that under Arsene Wenger as well. What Mikel Arteta has done is he's kind of implemented this thing where the team sort of shift over into like a back three, or even a back four with one of the midfielders dropping back, and that allows the fullback to push on. And it's seen us create spaces and overloads on the flanks, but it's also seen us defend a lot more effectively. Granit Xhaka has been told to sit in front of the back four and do his job, and he's done that far better. Lucas Torreira, when he plays, is noticeably a lot more disciplined, and he has contributed to that. Matteo Guendouzi, still room for improvement in terms of his discipline, but in terms of his effort and his heart, there's no denying that's already there. And so there is something to work with there from Mikel Arteta. My issue with Guendouzi yesterday was that he made a lot of loose passes, put us into some really dangerous situations unnecessarily, and that's where he needs to be a little bit more mature. Um, I think it's a positive that he always shows for the ball, that he always wants the ball, but sometimes he drops into dangerous positions and he gets it off his teammates, and then it's from then on where the danger begins. And I don't necessarily like that. So I'd like to see him be a bit more smarter in the positions that he drops into, and his over eagerness to create an angle and give an option to his teammates can often put him in trouble and make him look bad. So I'd like to see him be a little bit more smarter in that sense. But yeah, look, going forward, I don't think there's been a huge improvement in Arsenal since Mikel Arteta took over, but there has been an improvement defensively. And I think Mikel Arteta, when he came in, everybody expected him to come in and play this swashbuckling football because he was at Manchester City. Everybody expected him to come in and look to blow opponents away and, play this unreal Barcelona / Pep Guardiola-esque style of football. But what he has done is he's come in and he's looked at the team and he said, right, the first port of call here is to improve this defense. And I think he's absolutely right to have done that. Now, some people will question it. Some people will say that he's not necessarily playing to our strengths, which is on paper, at least, in those forward positions. But I disagree. I think that Mikel Arteta is absolutely doing the right thing by focusing on Arsenal's defensive unit first. It's been our biggest problem. It's been our biggest problem for years. Even before Unai Emery took over, during the Arsene Wenger days, it was a constant problem for Arsenal. And it's nice to see somebody coming in, recognizing that and addressing it. And we're seeing the progress. Now, is it where it needs to be just yet? No, it's not. There's still a lot of room for improvement. There's still time for Mikel Arteta to get this right, and we don't expect him to turn our fortunes around straight away. Arsenal are like a massive cruise ship. We've been on the wrong course. We need to turn it around, but you're not going to turn it around straight away. It's not a car. You're not going to do it in a 3-point turn. It's going to be a long, slow process steering this huge ship, this huge football club back on track. And Mikel Arteta, in my opinion, is doing a good job of improving us defensively for now. Now, down the line, he'll need to find the balance. He'll need to find the balance between making us defensively sound or more sound, more sturdy, and taking the shackles off so that Arsenal can go and play their free-flowing attacking football that we all became used to over the last 10, 15 years or so. So there is a balance to be found, but that is the most difficult thing in football, is finding that balance. And that doesn't happen overnight. When you look at Liverpool, for example, they're a team that certainly didn't have the balance initially. They were very top heavy, lots of attacking talent, but defensively they were a shambles. They would concede 3 goals here 3 goals there, and people would talk about them being brilliant under Klopp. And there was progress because you could see they'd improved in one aspect, but he still hadn't found that balance. And now, having signed a couple of players, having spent big to sign a couple of players, Jurgen Klopp has found that balance. And look at Liverpool now. They're flying. They're dominating the Premier League, European champions, and they're on course to achieve great things. So balance doesn't happen overnight. It's the most difficult thing to find in football. I always maintain that. And we've got to be patient with Mikel Arteta because it will come eventually. And I do genuinely believe that. In terms of Alexandre Lacazette, now I spoke about him a little bit earlier in the show briefly, and I want to talk about the fact that I don't feel that it's worth shoehorning him and Aubameyang into the same team anymore. And I think that it's becoming more and more evident, particularly away from home, that it doesn't really happen. It doesn't work. We're not getting the best out of either player because we're sticking Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang out on the left flank and expecting him to deliver goals. He got into a couple of positions yesterday, missed the chances. Of course, he's been out for a while. Maybe that had an impact. Maybe he was a little bit rusty, but for me, the pair cannot play in the same team. And I think that Mikel Arteta has a difficult decision to make here in the sense of, when he took over and when Emery took over, everyone was saying, they're our best 2 players, Aubameyang, Lacazette. But Lacazette is not showing that for me anymore. He's not showing what it is that seems to make managers pick him time and time again. What? Because he backs into people, because he commits fouls, because he closes people down. That's great. But as a striker, there's got to be an output, and there isn't an output at the moment from Alexandre Lacazette. He's not scoring anywhere near enough goals. He's not producing assists. I'm not entirely sure why he warrants a place in this side anymore. I think he should be out. I think he's got to be left out for a sustained period of time and give the opportunities to other people, because if it was somebody else, we'd be calling for him to be left out. We were talking about Pepe when he first came in, that he wasn't delivering and that he should be left out. Well, now the same is true of Alexandre Lacazette, and I don't care how much we paid for him. I don't care about what he's done in the past. At this moment in time, he's not playing well enough. And that leads me on to another player who is dividing opinion amongst the fans, and that is Mesut Ozil. Again, included in the team. Again, didn't put in a spectacular performance, but his performance is being hammered somewhat unfairly by certain sections of the fan base. Now, was he the Mesut Ozil that we know he can be? No. Was he good enough to dictate and change the game? No. But he did complete the most forward passes of any Arsenal player in the first half, the second in the overall game, despite coming off after 62 minutes or whatever it was. He made the most interceptions, retained the ball the most for the club in the first half. So this is my problem now. Did he do enough from an attacking sense? No, he probably didn't. Is he as great as he once was? No, he probably isn't. But people just sit there and point the finger at him and say he's the problem. He's not the problem. The problem is beyond Mesut Ozil. If Mesut Ozil gets the ball and the movement isn't there ahead of him, then, there's not a great deal he can do. Is he the type of player that's going to pick the ball up, beat 2 or 3 men and fire one into the top bins? Absolutely not. We know that now. So why do people keep expecting it? Why do people keep expecting something from someone that they've never seen? Why do they think they're going to get it now? Is there a case that he should be left out of the team? There probably is. And I'm okay with that. I accept that. I'm okay with people debating whether Mesut Ozil should be in the starting 11 moving forward or not. I've absolutely got no issues with that. I think that there's a case for both sides of the argument. What I've got an issue with, though, is people coming away from games like that saying he was the reason we didn't win, because he wasn't. He wasn't by any stretch of the imagination the reason that we didn't win. And I think you just need to be a bit more level-headed when debating this. It seems like there is a Mesut out camp and a Mesut in camp, and it's like nobody can be in the middle. Nobody can have a sensible debate about the matter. It's purely I hate him or I love him, and that drives me absolutely fucking mental, because there is a debate to be had here, and I accept that and I enjoy the debate. But sitting there having a go at someone just unconditionally just drives me up the wall, and it's sad to see Arsenal fans do that, because I like to think that Arsenal fans are. I know people give us a bad name for the sort of negativity and the anger that certain people on certain platforms portray. But ultimately, I think that we're quite a smart fan base. We're quite a clued up fan base. We know a lot about our club. We know a lot about the game, and we're quite an intelligent fan base overall. Therefore, it frustrates me when I see such simplistic arguments being thrown into the arena as to why Mesut Ozil shouldn't play. There we go. I'm going to come over to some of your comments in a moment. Leave your questions in there as I make my way through them as we enter the last few minutes of the stream. Let's go back to some of those comments. Hold on. So let's see what you guys are saying around Mikel Arteta, because as I said, I was unsure of some of his decisions yesterday, but I don't blame him for the fact that Arsenal didn't win the game. And I certainly don't want him out, and I'm certainly not calling for his head. Tejas says, Arteta got it totally wrong this time. I think he made a couple of mistakes. I don't think he got it totally wrong. So I slightly disagree with you there. John Wren says, how can Arteta not beat Burnley with a team which has many big name players, Ozil, Laka and Oba, to name a few? John, I think we've seen in the Premier League over the years that it's not as simple as that. It's not necessarily the team with the biggest names on paper that win games. I think it's harsh to, point the finger at Mikel Arteta. He's come in and inherited a shit show. He has improved them to a degree, Maybe not as much initially as some people would have expected, but you've got to look at where we're coming from. And I pulled up this stat yesterday because I was having a debate with a friend about whether Arsenal have improved. And under Unai Emery, in the last 9 games, we lost 4 of them, and we drew, I think, 3 of them. Under Mikel Arteta, we've only lost 1 of the last 9. Now, I know there's not been enough wins in there. I know there's been some frustrating draws along the way. But you've got to be honest and you've got to be realistic. And you've got to say that, whilst it's not ideal, it's not necessarily what we wanted in terms of the results. And we hope that we'd be able to close the gap on the top 4 somewhat. There is an improvement. Is it a big enough improvement? That's up for debate. And I'll totally accept that. But I don't think you can argue there hasn't been one at all. Dow says, I think Lacazette and Ozil need to be dropped. Arteta needs time and backing from the fans and the board. Agreed. Paratosh says, can we give Arteta at least a proper year before we make a judgment? I think we should. And I'm perfectly happy to do that and give him the time. It doesn't mean we can't ask questions about certain decisions though along the way. And I just want to be clear on that. It's not being negative. It's not having an agenda. It's just asking questions. And that is, as people who talk about the game, talk about our club, and I'm a journalist these days, and my job is to write about football and write opinions about football, and that's why I share my opinions. And there's nothing wrong with having them as long as they're portrayed in a responsible way. That's my opinion. What else have we got here? Graham Sutherland disagrees. He says no, judgment starts when you start the job. I think you can make judgments as soon as someone starts the job, but should they be conclusive, definitive judgments so early on? I disagree. I don't think they should be at this point anyway. What else have we got here? Sir Antonio's block says, blaming the pitch, blaming the ref, blaming anti-football. Sounds like Wenger's pathetic bleating. The pitch was bad. The referees are bad in general in the Premier League. And Burnley do play anti-football. So, that's my take on that. They do. They play rugby. They hoof the ball forward and they look to physically bully people. They're 2 players after the game speaking to, I think it was Laura Woods on Sky Sports, literally as soon as the game finished. Yeah, our game plan was to get in their faces. You should be going out to try and play football. You should be going out to try and play the game to the best of your ability. And like I said earlier on, it's okay trying to level the playing field, but when your first intention is to go out there and get in people's faces, as they call it, and it's a term that I hate. People use it in this country all the time. Oh, let's get about them. Let's show them that we're here. Let's get in their faces. What does that even mean? It's a game of football. Do your talking with the ball at your feet. But teams that are incapable of doing that, and managers who are incapable of thinking, at that level of sophistication, are all about getting in people's faces. It drives me mad, and it doesn't deserve praise. Managers who intentionally go out to rough up teams before they play football do not deserve credit. They do not deserve praise. And I go back to it again and again and again. That is why Sean Dyche will never deserve a top job. Stan the Man says, really enjoy listening to your content, Harry. Thank you so much, mate. Thank you for tuning in as always. Kieran King says, starting with the base of the team, the goals will come, referring to my earlier comments that Mikel Arteta has started trying to develop Arsenal from the back. Absolutely, Kieran, you spot on. John says Arteta has Arsenal more organised. He does indeed. What else have we got? Aussie Gooner says, under Arteta, we have a structure defensively, something we have lacked in recent seasons. Couldn't agree more, my friend. Talking about Matteo Guendouzi, Abhishek Chowdhury says Guendouzi's a bit slow on the ball at times. I agree with that. Slim also says we have improved defensively. So it seems to be, a common theme amongst you guys as well, not just myself, that there has been an improvement defensively. Graham says, come on, Harry, let's not lay this at the door of Guendouzi. If Ozil, Lacazette and Over put in the amount of effort that Guendouzi did, we might do better. Guendouzi has a ton of stuff to learn, but he's fighting for us. I agree. I'm not sitting here saying that Matteo Guendouzi is a bad footballer. I just don't think he's better than Lucas Torreira at this point in time. Therefore, I couldn't understand why he was selected ahead of him. That's kind of my point. There is talent there in Matteo Guendouzi. There is heart, there is fight, there is desire to succeed. And I think over the course of time, if he's coached right, he can be a very, very good footballer. At this moment in time, though, can I sit here and say that I'd rather him in the side than a pairing of Torreira and Xhaka? I can't. And that's kind of my point. What else have we got here? Arsenal Forever says, do you think he's afraid to drop players like Laka and Ozil? I don't necessarily think he's afraid. I think that Mikel Arteta is somebody who believes very strongly in his ideas, who, seems pretty confident, I would say. I don't think he's afraid of dropping them. I think he's afraid of a dressing room revolt. And I think he probably would have watched what happened with Unai Emery. He would have come in and seen the state of things, the morale, the mentality within the dressing room, within the club, and realized how important it is to actually keep some of your big hitters on side. That's not to say that you should bow down to their every demand, or that you should change your views because they need to be aligned with their views. But what it does is it means that people that are influential in the dressing room, if they're happy, then it has a knock-on effect on the rest of the team. It's clear that Ozil is very influential, very well respected amongst his teammates, as is Lacazette, as is Aubameyang, as are others. Granit Xhaka being another one. We keep hearing about what a leader he is behind the scenes. That's why he was made the captain, etc., etc. So I don't think he's afraid of dropping them. I think he understands the consequences of pissing those players off and the knock-on effect that has on the rest of the squad. And so if he can keep them happy, I think he will. He would try to do that. It's not to say that I don't think he's got the balls to make the big calls when he needs to, but I think he values what they bring to the dressing room and the influence they have. Therefore, he is a little bit more cautious around that than probably Unai Emery was. Paratosh says Harry, Mustafi and Granit were pretty good yesterday. The positives, absolutely, they were. And again, Granit Xhaka was asked to play in another role, this time at left back after Bukayo Saka went off. So showing that he's a team player. Looked decent enough again for me. Mustafi was getting his head on pretty much everything. He was making some really crucial interceptions and blocks. And again, another impressive performance from him. Let's see what else we've got here. Do you think Xhaka will end up getting the captaincy again? I think he will one day, maybe, but not soon. But he honestly does seem like a leader. Yeah, he does seem like a leader. And it's become more and more evident now why he was given the captaincy in the first place. Is it, has he made mistakes in an Arsenal shirt? Of course he has. Is he the perfect player? No, but you can see that when Granit Xhaka is playing with confidence, that he is a leader. He is a leader of men. And, whilst he's got room for improvement as well, as does everybody else in this Arsenal team, he shows that quality for me, that leadership quality that maybe others don't. And that's why not only Unai Emery, but, others have spoken about it and about his leadership qualities and why people regard him as, even if he's not wearing the armband right now, as one of the team's natural leaders. Your boy Liam says they should play with Oba on top, Lacazette, Pepe right midfield, and Martinelli left midfield, and not with Ozil. I don't think that Lacazette can play in that number 10 role. I've heard other people banding that about, and I just don't see it. I don't think he's got the vision. I don't think he's got the passing ability. I just don't think that suits him. It's just my opinion, though. So of course, it's a fair shout. Right, that brings us to the end of the stream. We're only supposed to go for half an hour, but we've run a little bit over thanks to your fantastic comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. You know the drill by now. And let me know your thoughts on the stuff discussed in the comment section below. I'm always happy to hear from you guys and hear your views as well. So please do subscribe, like, share. You know the drill by now. And we'll be back very soon with more content. We'll be bringing you something tomorrow as well, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget this show is sponsored by loserpool.com, where you can play the last man standing game, only this time you pick the losers rather than the winners. You can enter the game for around about £2, I think it is, and you can stand the chance of winning up to £1,000. It's a really great concept. It's a really good game. It's becoming more and more popular here in the UK, and we're proud to say that loserpool.com are our sponsors here at the Chronicles of a Gooner. So do check it out. Head over there, sign up, and we'll be back very soon with more. Until next time, take care. Ciao.